everybody, Cleo here, and I just realized that my mic is over there. So, hey everybody, and it's time to finally wrap up the year 2023 when it comes to my reading. And of course, now the sunshine comes out full and bright so that I can barely look into the camera at this point in time because of the amount of heavy sunlight hitting my face right now. But I think we're still okay in terms of lighting for this video, so we can continue like that. So, the year 2023, reading wise, I don't know, I don't think it was a very exceptional year. I think it was very middle of the road. I feel like I had very little 5-star reads in there as well. I mean, I even know that to be a fact. And yeah, I wish for, I don't know, a little bit of a better experience, I guess, next year in 2024, and I can tell you that so far that has been the case. I feel like I definitely had a good time when it comes to most of the books. I had a good time with the amount of books that I was able to get into that year and things like that, but I do still want to balance out my reading versus other hobbies a little bit more again in 2024. But let's just look at the stats. I will be sharing the statistics based on the story graph, sort of like wrap up for 2023. So we'll look at the different stats for that, and then I'll go through some of my more like the best books of the year and the worst books, but I didn't put too much effort into that, I will admit, at this point in time, because I don't know, I somehow feel like in the month of April 2024, I feel like 2023 is a wrap already, and like reflecting back on it now, it just feels a little bit weird. And so I'm kind of like left feeling a little bit like indifference to the idea of like looking into like what was my best book of last year at this point in time, because it feels like so past it yet. Why am I not getting the did this app change? No, right? I'm not getting like the stats page. Because I'm not signed in? Why am I not signed in? I'm always signed in. Weird app glitch there, but let's just go through 2023 and the statistics for that year. So I'll look at the 2023 reading wrap up that Storycraft does a little bit later, but let's just first look at the different statistics. So I was able to, should I screen record this and add that into the video? Potentially, right? Alright, so in 2023 I read a total of 111 books, whereas my goal had been to read 52 books. I put my goal on 52 every single year because, you know, that's just like what I know is definitely achievable without like putting too much pressure on that goal neither, because I don't want it to get to that point where you're like feeling like, oh no, I need to be reading more than I am, because, you know, in principle it is not about the number. I just want it to be about having a good time. I do like setting myself a goal, and like in my mind the goal is 100 instead of 52 to some extent, but if I don't reach that 100 but I'm able to like spend more time doing other things that I like, then I'll also be more than happy with whatever number I do end up getting to. But so 111, a nice number. I think I got most of those in the second half probably, because I think that this year I did not reach the 52 before the 1st of July, which typically is like the sign that I'm on track for my 100th book goal. But I think I was a little bit behind at that point in time, but I easily managed to catch up to that in the second half of the year without really putting too much of an effort into that neither. Page goal, that was very arbitrary because it was the first time that I had to set a page goal for myself. Like I had to set a page goal for myself, so I didn't really know, or like I could have of course looked it up on Goodreads, and maybe I did, I don't really remember, but I didn't really have like an idea of like, okay, what am I aiming for here? So I put it at 30,000 and I ended up getting to 38,000 to 223,000. No, 38 pages, 38,223 pages. That's what I ended up getting to. So all in all, not too shabby, not too, like, it's definitely way overshot of what my goal was, but it's also not like so far out of it that I was totally out of tune with how much reading I get done in a year. This is like a fun thing about Storygraph, is that you can kind of get to see like the different moods that your books hit, and I do definitely hit the same moods mostly, and that is also reflected in the mood graph at this point in time. My 3 biggest moods, 2 of those are also in 2024 so far, my biggest moods. So the 3 biggest moods that I'm hitting is adventure, emotional, and dark. And yeah, that adventure definitely sticks to the fantasy side of my reading. Emotional might fit a little bit closer to the literary fiction side of what I'm reading, but definitely there are quite a lot of fantasies that I read that also hit that emotional mark. And then the darkness, yeah, that is probably also more in line with like my literary fiction choices. But definitely some of that fantasy is also more on the darker side. I think my least often recurring moods are inspiring, relaxing, and informative. And I think that kind of, except for that relaxing then, points to the fact that I don't read a lot of non-fiction, which I think inspiring and informative will probably be more like linked to non-fiction. But then that relaxing, I guess, is like really like popcorn reads, things you can read really quickly that don't really have much substance to them, and that is just a reflection of the fact that I don't really typically enjoy that a lot in my literature. I like my literature to be a little bit more challenging, which is funny to say because my 4th less often used mood is challenging. But yeah, it will be interesting to actually like look at what they consider the challenging read, which I can do, right? Wow, that's okay, so I don't actually think that this Animal Wife is a challenging. Study for Obedience, yes. The House of Doors, I don't see why you would put The House of Doors as challenging, and some of my other literary fictions that I've read this year not. But so you can see here that I've definitely, the few things that have been marked as challenging, quite a lot of them I've also really enjoyed. But yeah, I don't know how moods get set in any case, but so yeah. No, I didn't want to click on that. In terms of the pace, this is also a chart that stays more or less the same throughout the year. So I'm mainly consuming what is considered medium-paced books. And the thing that I consume the least of, weirdly enough, is slow-paced books, which is another one of those cases where you're like, okay, but what do we constitute as slow-paced? I think a lot of what I read is for fantasy considered slow paced, but if we're looking at literary fiction, for example, then slow paced is a lot more slow than whatever you consider slow paced to be in fantasy. So if we're looking at it that way, then I think indeed even the slowest of fantasy books is most likely medium paced when it comes to overall literature. So then it makes sense for me to have not that many slow paced, because if it's really like about almost nothing, then yes, I'm not really gravitating towards it neither. I am a little bit surprised to still have quite some fast pace in there. I don't know whether that is just like maybe mangas and comics or something like that. What are we considering fast pace? Like 19 Claws and a Blackbird, I wouldn't even consider fast-paced. It's short stories, yes, but it's like a full collection of them. Novellas, the Murder Bot Diaries, I can see that. See, there's some comic books. A lot of novellas are put like that. Like the Frugal Wizard's Handbook, I didn't consider that fast-paced because I was just really struggling with that. But yeah, Fate of the Fallen, I can see that. Shy is definitely not fast-paced. I don't see why people would consider that fast-paced. But yeah. Go back. No, not that far back. Go back to my 2023 stats. Alright. Then page number. This always kind of surprises me because I always consider that I'm reading a ton of fantasy, and so I'm reading a ton of long ass books, but clearly I'm reading a ton of short books to compensate for the long ass books, and not every fantasy that I read actually reaches that 500 plus mark. So we have the lowest amount is actually in that 500 plus category, and the very majority, half of what I read is under 300 pages, which is surprising, but that is what keeps the motor going to get to those 111 books clearly. But that being said, it's also not like I'm consciously doing that. I do like short fiction. I really like books that are under 300 pages. I think the like magic number is like 250 or something like that. Not in a fantasy, but in all my other books, I really enjoy that length. So literary fiction, for example, if it's longer than that, then it might just be too much already. Then we see, yeah, I really am not reading a lot of nonfiction, and I'm currently reading a nonfiction that I'm really enjoying a lot, and that makes me go like, oh, I should really be reading more nonfiction, because when it's nonfiction like this, it really is super interesting. It gets me riled up more than fantasy, maybe because I know that this is real life, that these are real facts being shared. So I would maybe want to make an effort, maybe not in 2024 because I already made my goals for 2024, but I can still kind of try to set an intention for that in my choices. If I get to 0 TBR, which has secretly become the goal for 2024, even though it was not the goal at the beginning of the year, if I get there, then I might indeed try to put more nonfiction into my reading life from that point onwards. Genres, no surprise there. Huge win there for fantasy, so that is over 40, so it's probably if I just like, but I don't want to click on it, but it's like, so 53 fantasy, for example. So 53 fantasy, big win out on the second, which is literary fiction, which 29 books in that category. So yeah, really happy with that. Also very happy to have LGBTQIA+ as the third. I do think that that probably is somewhat lenient on the LGBTQ like label, because I don't, or maybe I do read quite a lot that has queer characters at its center, but I just didn't realize it was that many. But maybe it's better than I thought. Yeah, science fiction is coming in hot there as a fourth, which I did not see coming, and historical as the fifth. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that as my top 5. I would maybe want to see that historical replaced. I don't necessarily have any like emotional label linked to historical, let's say it like that. It's not like I look at that and I go like, yeah, it's true, I love historical fiction. I'm like, okay, I didn't realize I'd read that much historical. And so I might actually want to dip into horror a little bit more and want to see horror make an appearance there in that top 5. These are my own tags, and they're not really, I don't tend to do tags like that anymore all that well, so these are not accurate, with exception of the female author one, which I have 59 books out of 111 that were written by women, so that's more or less 50-50, you know. I think it's leaning a little bit towards the side of female authors, so a little bit more female authors than male authors, but it's very close to that 50-50 mark without putting any effort into that, so I'm more than happy to keep it like that. And it's funny to see, because I sometimes feel like I'm only reading women. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, I'm reading like, I've such a preference now for reading women voices that I sometimes feel like, am I now neglecting male voices? But these stats tell me, no, I am not. The formatting, this is not fully accurate, because if I have a book that I physically own, that I also, that I also read in a different format, then I will mark it as prints. But it might have been that I was mainly consuming it in audio format, for example. I'm gonna change this ISO again because I feel like I'm super dark and this white t-shirt is probably not helping. Alright, much better, but it's another one of those annoying days where the weather is just like constantly changing on me. So in a few minutes there might be like a cloud, that cloud cover is like breached, and so we'll have immense sun again, and this will be super overexposed again. Really need to figure out again how to have the exposure on that automatically changed. Then my most read authors, Cal Kate. This is no surprise because I did a reread for the first 4 books in King's Dark Tidings, and I reread the first book in The Shroud of Prophecy and read for the first time the second book in The Shroud of Prophecy. If I would have started that whole process earlier, I would have even had more, because in January and February I also read a Cal Kate book. But so, Cal Kate to the win. Martha Wells coming in as a late second because I consumed quite a few murder bots within the month of December. And then Jacqueline Carey Carrie, for who I was doing a read-along throughout the entire year, probably, coming in there as the third spot in a tie with P. Jelly Clark, but P. Jelly Clark is definitely a lot less page count than the Jacqueline Carey ones. Languages, majority English, with like a small shout out for Spanish. That is just one book, probably. Yeah, one book. What did I read last year? Yeah, Elena Knows. And I also have one book already in 2024, and I'm hoping that we're gonna get to more books than that in Spanish in 2024. Number of books and pages, we can see that we have like basically 3 sort of like peaks within this graph. The first one coming in April, which is Magical Readathon. It's April right now. I don't think that we'll have another peak this month, because Magical Readathon this year is not going the way it went last year, but that is the explanation for that peak. And then the next peak comes in July, August, which is my own readathon and Magical Readathon, the second round of Magical Readathon. And then the next peak comes in December, which is the second round of my readathon. So all my peaks are readathon related, but I will definitely tell you that you can see after all these peaks follow valleys. So in order to be able to peak for those readathons, I need some recovery times in the months in between. So it's not the case that I just need to be looking for readathons every single month, because that just doesn't work for me. I would just like get burned out of that reading pace that I achieved during those months. Star ratings, as indicated, there aren't many 5 stars in this year. I only have 4 5 stars in that graph. When it comes to 1 stars, I only have 2, which is also interesting, and I don't even at this point in time know which 2 those are. But I guess we will go looking through those as well at this point in time. So let's go jump over into the 5 star versus 1 star section. Let's start with the 1 star. So I have 2 1 stars here. And one of them is that book that I referred to earlier. So Animal Wife by Lara Ehrlich. This is a short story collection, and I don't really remember anything except for this weird short story in which I think a woman, there we go, sunshine is there. Am I too exposed now? Probably not. Except for this weird short story in which a woman, I think, has sexual relations with a deer in her garden. They were too weird. I didn't get anything out of them. I was just like, what am I listening to most of the time? And the second one is The Gospel According to the New World by Maryse Condé. I do believe Maryse Condé passed away this year, sadly, like in 2024. And unfortunately, I did not get along with this book, and I also don't really remember much about it. But it did have like a lot of course, because of this title, a lot of biblical undertones, which is not my favorite to begin with, and that's really all I can remember about this one. This is one that I read for the Booker Prize, the International Booker Prize long list, but it's one that didn't end up working for me. And then let's go to the 5 stars. I don't need that graph to tell me which the 5 stars are. So the first 5 star is Ghosts by Dolly Alderton, and I still need to read other Dolly Alderton's works to see if this is a new favorite author or not, but this book really, really worked very well for me. This is a book about a woman in her 30s. She has had some bad relationships. She is single. All of her friends are kind of in the stage of life in which they're, you know, either married, have kids, you know, they're following that traditional path in life. She doesn't really know whether that's going to happen for her or not, but in any case, she kind of feels like the people in her life have kind of moved on to a different stage, and she doesn't really have anybody to kind of talk with. It's a lot about dating in that stage of life, but also about the evolutions of relationships and the way in which, you know, friend dynamics change when you are no longer in the same stage of life, when you're no longer experiencing the same things, and so you're the sort of like, you know, what do I want to call that? You know, the topics of conversation kind of start to change, and you're starting to find yourself having less of a common ground that relationship was based on. Yeah, and I found that to be really relatable and to work really well for me. And then the second 5-star, and let's immediately say the third and the fourth, because they're one big series, is the LiveShip Trader series by Robin Hobb, which definitely is a highlight of 2024. 2023, and it is a little bit of a sad one as well, because this is a series that is part of a bigger universe, which is the realm of the Elderlings. However, the majority of the series within the realm of the Elderlings follow a character called Fitz, and those books, I also have a 5-star within the first trilogy of this series, so I have given a Fitz book 5 stars, but the fact that this LiveShip Trader series is more or less, I feel like, I think, a standalone within this world. I don't think we revisit these characters. I hope we will revisit these characters. So that's kind of where my sadness comes in with this, because I fear that this is the last time I'll be seeing these characters, and I want more from these characters because I really enjoyed this series a whole ton. So in this series we are looking at these live ships, which are basically ships that when 3 generations of captains have died aboard this ship, then the ship head comes to life, the figurehead of the ship comes to life, and this brings a lot of tactical advantage with it, and in order to, then this brings a lot of advantages with it. This ship and the captain kind of work together to be able to have the biggest profit or the biggest success out on the sea, and so families invest quite a lot of energy into creating a live ship. And in the family that we're following, this ship is about to come alive because Altia's father, who's the 3rd generation, he's about to pass away on board of the ship, and she is expected to inherit the ship. And she is expecting to inherit the ship. However, there is a spanner that is put into the works, and this series has some characters that I deeply love, some characters that I deeply despise, some characters that I absolutely changed my mind about throughout the course of this series. I was just hooked to every second of it. I know that some people consider this as slow, nothing happens, and I feel like so much happens, and I was so hooked the entire way. This is the type of story that really works for me, and that, you know, I just want to consume more and more and more and more and more of. So yes, here's hoping that in 2024 I do have time to fit in the next trilogy within Realm of the Elderlings, which will be a Fitz trilogy, and here's hoping that I'm not disappointed after the huge win that was LiveShip Traders for me. And then maybe let me also look at those sort of like 4.75 stars just for you guys. So those would be like the runners-up. So we have People Persons by Candy Cardi Williams. I would probably put that lower at this point in time because this didn't really have the impact that Queenie by Candice Cardi Williams had. So this is a story in which we're looking at 5 half siblings. So they all share the same father, but they haven't really known about one another. They met each other like once when they were like 12 or something like that, but they do kind of have like some connection to one another, and they do have the ability like to reach out to one another, which comes in handy when I don't even remember the name of the protagonist, but the protagonist ends up in a sticky situation and she needs her siblings' help to get out of it, and this, I feel like the sort of like shining jewel of this book is the sort of like humor situation and the way in which they have to kind of work together to resolve these things. And I do like the end message, or the way that we build a character towards the end of the book, but it didn't have the sort of impact that Queenie had, which it was a book that I just absolutely adored. A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow is a story about a girl who is about to turn 16. She has a medical condition. It's never explained exactly which condition she has, but she has a medical condition, and her prognosis is basically that, you know, she wouldn't reach the age of 16. So she's about to reach that magical age, and her friend kind of, for laughs, brings like a spindle for her 16th birthday party because she's a big Cinderella fan. And when she touches that spindle, she is transported to a parallel world where there's a princess in jeopardy and she's about to help her out. Really nice story, really enjoyed chronic illness representation for it. I'm not sure that I am going to enjoy the second book because I actually enjoyed this first novel and I feel like we can end it there. But maybe the second one will surprise me. And then we have the one book I read in Spanish, which is Elena Knows or Elena Sabe by Claudia Pinheiro. This is a Argentinian, I believe, or Chilean, I think Argentinian novel in which we are following this woman who has Parkinson's disease. Her daughter has just passed away and the circumstances lead people to believe that she committed suicide. However, she does not want to accept that this is what happened to her daughter, and so she sets out to find answers. However, because she has Parkinson's and quite a severe degree of Parkinson's, this is a whole endeavor. What I mainly enjoyed about this one is the Parkinson representation and the way in which the struggle of just getting out of the door is communicated and written down, how that is put into words. And yeah, I think that the story itself, like the actual like investigation and stuff like that, just interested me less, and that's why it didn't end up becoming a 5-star. If I would have had that representation with a storyline that interested me more, then it definitely could have been another 5-star for me. Well, it turns out that I forgot to show you guys the reading wrap-up that Storygraph automatically generates. Plus, I also apparently don't know which books I gave 5-star because I forgot one. So I decided to add a little section to this video because, you know, I'm in the middle of editing it and I was like, okay, what do? Do I just insert some clips from it? Like some, yeah, sure, eat now, Buffy, why don't you? I was like, sure, how am I going to solve this? And then I think like the only really way for me to do it is to kind of go through it in a new clip. So without further ado, let's screen record again. So 2023 reading wrap up. So some of these tasks will be the same as I've already talked about, and so those ones I won't be repeating. So congratulations on a brilliant reading year. First book that I read this year was Stress of the Emerald Sea. I was on top of my year of Sanderson on the first day of the year and never again after that. And the last book that I read is Strangers I Know by Claudia Durastanzi. Now, this is a mood map. I personally don't fully understand this whole thing. So like, the lighter you read, the higher the line. I feel like it's pretty even when it comes to that, with a little bit more light stuff, I guess, than in the beginning of the year. So it says, you embarked on exciting adventures, rode a roller coaster of emotion, and delved into dark and intense narratives, which reflects on those moods that are like most prevalent. The fact that I mostly have adventurous, emotional and dark as the moods that I mainly read, and most of the stories developed at a steady pace. This is that overview of books and pages read per month. We already talked about that. Alright, battery died on me again. Met my reading goal, met my page goal. Then genres we already talked about. Then the longest book that I read was A Mad Ship with 906 pages. The shortest one is a short story, which is The Angel of Khan el-Khalili by P. Jelly Clark. The average length was 328 pages and it took me around 6 days to finish each book. The shortest time it took me was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Sean McGuire, which took me 1 day, and then 66 days for The Dark Between the Trees, another book I should have DNF'd clearly. Authors we already talked about. Average rating I didn't really talk about, but like 3.54. And then we get to the 5-star reads, and there I forgot about a book, and that is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. This is a cozy story about basically people who go to their local community center because they need some help with one thing or another, and they go to the local library that they have there, and there's like a perfect librarian there who gives them a lot of recommendations for their problems, but also manages to fit in like one recommendation for each one that is really outside of what they're looking for, but turns out to be exactly what they needed. ratings. We've been there, done that. Some months were better than others. So apparently last year, February was the highlight of my year. I would have never been able to tell that without these stats. And that's because my highest average rating for like my highest average monthly rating was February, when I had a monthly rating of 4.06. And June wasn't that great because I only had an average rating of 3 at that point in time. July was the month in which I read the most, which is my own readathon, because I read 4,231 pages that month. In terms of the popularity of the books that I read, Crying in H Mart was the most popular one because it's been shelved by over 169,000 users. And then The Book Cat is the least popular one because only 55 other users have shelved it. And then the highest averagely rated book that I read is A Prayer for the Crown Shy. And then I picked up some books that apparently were outside of my normal, which is Upstream by Mary Oliver, which also did not go very well. I was hoping to really like this one, and that did not turn out to be the case. And I read books by 73 new authors, and 64 of the books that I read were part of a series. So 64 out of 111, that's a lot of series. And I revisited a total of 7 books this year. A lot of that is King's Dark Tiding, because like 5 books at the very least from Calcate that I reread that I read in 2023 were rereads. 5 out of those 7 are just like Calcate books. And then I DNF'd 8 books, and so this is my, like, you need to be DNFing more. I read 111 books, and I do count my DNFs in there. I use some sort of a trick to be able to count them. And only 8 of them were DNFs. Like, what? And 55 of the books that I read were from my own shelves. Now this is definitely physical TBR, because for my like stats on hauling books and making sure I read them within a year, I do count ebooks as being hauled as well. But for my owned books on Storygraph, I consider them owned if I have them on like physically. And I never remove them even if I unhaul them. So if I owned it at one point in time, it's there. But typically for ebooks, I won't have mentioned it as being like owned. And then I successfully completed 2 reading challenges. Yeah, I definitely wasn't doing a lot of reading challenges yet. That one, why is it not showing anymore? It used to show something. It showed like the things that like work really well for me. Maybe I'll have to look into that again. And this is basically like an overview of all the books that I read. I'll scroll through it a little bit so that you just kind of get to see the overview of what I read last year, but I'm definitely not going to go over it. Like, I'm not going to put much attention to it because it's a long list. It's 111 books. We will be here all day if I have to, you know, even just like mention all the titles, but definitely if I were to spend a little bit more time with each one of these books. And that's it, guys. That was the section that I forgot to film, and we can go back to past version of me. Come on, turn off. I have a new remote control, but it doesn't seem to be working very well. Turn off. Come on. This is... Alright, what else to say about my 2023? So I also made a visual that I don't know whether I still have it. I have to find it back because I made it in like January, I think. So that's a very long time ago. So I also have this graph of the books that I hauled within a month versus the books that I read within a month. And there we can see that if we look at the totals at the bottom, it is a full-on balance. I hauled 72 books in 2023, and I read 72 books. So a full blank slate, no progress towards reducing my physical TBR. In principle, this is a perfect year, of course. Hauling is the same amount as you read. However, I do want to kind of reduce the amount of books on my TBR. Those 23, I still feel that with 23 books on there, I'm still feeling like, you know, I'm kind of racing that deadline that I put myself of having the books on there for 1 year, and that I need to still be like conscious about like what I'm putting in there in order to be able to keep up with that 1 year deadline. Whereas I would like it to be just like something that happens naturally. So I do want to reduce it, as I indicated earlier within this video. I actually want to go back to a TBR 0 and then try to work with a 5-book TBR for a while, just hauling 5 books, reading them, and then hauling 5 more and seeing how I like that dynamic. I can definitely still change it again if that is also something that I'm not enjoying. But yeah, we can mainly see like the big hitters in terms of like adding books to this TBR are the months of April, which probably is for Magical Readathon. I probably had, though I only read 4, so probably that's not accurate then. I thought maybe I hauled quite a few for, you know, like Magical Readathon, but that doesn't seem like a decent reason. And then June, July, August, I hauled quite a fair bit. Now, I will say July, August, I also read quite a fair bit of those, but still, I wasn't making up the deficit in those months. June is the month in which I went to London, so that's definitely an explanation for that hauling there. July and August, I am expecting that it is also to do with those readathons, with like hauling ebooks in order to read them the same months, that kind of exasperated those numbers, because typically when it comes to like actual physical books, I wouldn't easily buy that amount of them, except for then when I went to London, for example, and I made this whole sort of like challenge to allow myself, like I did like chores in order to allow myself books to buy for that London trip, knowing that, you know, I would have prime access to English written books at that point in time. But so yeah, that is the blank slate that we went into 2024 with. Same amount of books that we went into 2023 with. I can definitely tell you that the number has gone down at this point in time, and that I'm hoping to have it go down even further in the months to come. Is there anything you still want to know about my 2023 reading year? Definitely let me know as well then down below. And yeah, let's move on into 2024. I might still have some videos out there about like my 2024 reading goals and the 2024 books that, you know, friends recommended to me and stuff like that. So you might still see some end of year content, but we are shifting it towards 2024 now, unless somebody here asks like a question about 2023 reading that makes me go like, yeah, I should really make a video out of that. But yeah, with that, I'm gonna end this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!